Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of Beyond Influence. I am Kwame Appiah, the head of influencer experience at Later, and I am one of your hosts. I'll pass it off to our other host.
Hey, everyone. Scott Sutton, CEO of Later. It is an amazing Monday, ready to kick the week off with a bang and dive into this conversation. Let's get it.
Yes, we're going to dive into this conversation with an incredible guest today. We usually are graced by great creators and influencers, but we are very lucky to be graced by a presence that is a very top marketer in the industry with a ton of industry knowledge. So we are here to learn a ton from you today. Welcome to the show, Lia Haberman.
Thank you. I appreciate that intro and big fan of Later.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit for our listeners who might not know about your work. We obviously know such a depth of experience in social media and influencer, but how did you get started in this space and kind of how's that journey gone for you so far?
Yeah, I started in entertainment, actually. I worked for E Entertainment Television, and that was kind of the OG influencers. And then I moved over into health and fitness, started hiring influencers for campaigns. Then I went to work for an influencer. Then I started writing a newsletter about influencer marketing and social marketing. And then I started getting hired for campaigns myself. So it's kind of, I think I've done the whole 360 of like working for, hiring and being an influencer. So at this point, I've kind of worn a lot of hats in the industry.
Nice. And you started off with a history degree, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And not only was it a history, it's medieval European history. So, can clearly see where there's a lot of relatability between that and, influencer marketing. But no, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I thought like maybe journalism, maybe English, maybe be a museum curator. Not everybody has it figured out at 18. And so I didn't really know what to do. And I just thought, okay, I'll do this. I have not really used it since, but I learned a lot of stuff.
That's awesome. So social media is Lia's Roman Empire, apparently. That's what we learned on this side.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think when we think about, your journey through it all, you like you said, you started in history and, ended up in entertainment and then going down this path. What was the initial trigger for you? What was the initial moment where you're like, you know what? I think this might be what direction I need to head in.
I like telling stories. I like to help people tell stories. I like to figure out where to tell stories, what format that story should take. So I think it was the same thing. I loved entertainment. I love TV. I love movies. I love people being entertained. I thought E was an amazing place to work because it really celebrated entertainment. It celebrated the value of good content. I mean, that might be debatable depending on like what you like watching on TV or movies. But at the time, I just felt like, okay, they really appreciate content and entertainment. And then it kind of segued into, I was working with Dick Clark Productions that does like the Golden Globes and the Billboard Music Awards and stuff like that. And that was a really good transition between celebrity and influencer. And from very early on, this was in 2015, I was working with them. They were inviting influencers to their shows, like Billboard Music Awards. They'd have all the celebrities and artists, but they'd also bring Cameron Dallas or Nash Greer, or like a bunch of Viners at the time and YouTubers, Casey Neistat, people like that. And they'd bring them to the shows so that they'd get the TV coverage from celebrities and artists, and then they'd get social coverage from all of the influencers. And that was kind of where I saw like, okay, there's a shift happening in like who has the mic and gets to tell stories and where they tell those stories. So for me, it was a very natural transition of like, okay, when I started my career, it's like, it's TV and it's celebrities. And then it shifted to social, and then it kind of shifted to influencers. And now I think it's shifted to, I don't want to get ahead of myself in this interview, but, I think it's kind of shifted to like everybody's an influencer. But we can talk more about that.
I love it. The good old days of Vine. I think it's that whole story is something to unpack on another,
R.I.P.
another episode.
R.I.P. Vine.
Yeah, I think, it's really interesting to see how it's developed. We talk about celebrities being kind of the original influencers. And then as, it's funny because Casey Neistat talked a lot about, vlogging before it was a thing, and vlogging before it was cool. And he was rooted in that same storytelling that you're talking about. And so, telling really compelling stories. And it doesn't need to be, highly contrived or anything. It can be people want to know about someone's normal life and be invested. So it's pretty cool that you've gotten to watch that evolution as it's played out. A funny story on that: we were in New York, and it was funny. I remember telling Kwame and some others we manifested a Casey Neistat encounter because we were like, how crazy it would be if we just saw him, and he literally in a varsity jacket on his e-skateboard just rolled past our Uber, and I was like, this is the most New York thing I've ever experienced in my entire life. It was like, yeah. Anyway, so as you think about, how did you end up working for an influencer? That's an interesting piece of your journey that I wanted to unpack.
Yeah. So I had hired her for some different campaigns and event appearances. We got along. I tend to, really cultivate like the people that I had hired. They had to kind of pass my own radar of like, would I follow this person? Am I interested in them? Like, is this something that I would regularly consume their content? So I know you can't always do that at scale. You'd be following thousands and thousands of people, and I'm sure some people do, but I felt like, especially the influencers that I went back to over and over, I really got invested in them and their lives and their content. So we became friends. And then she had a fitness app, she was launching a protein supplement. So she hired me to run marketing for her company. And so I think given the fact that I was so invested in her and her business and her story, I had a really good idea. Like I stepped in knowing, okay, here's your thing. We know that you're into this. I know that like, these are your likes and dislikes. And so I think it was much easier to step in and just kind of hit the ground running since I knew so much about her already. And then I think, I've always worked on, I would say, all sides, like whether it's the brand side as a marketer, whether it's helping influencers, whether it's being an influencer. I worked for Colin and Samir this summer and led some live sessions for them. And so I think I'm equally comfortable working on either side. And I think creators appreciate that. Like they know that I'm advocating for them and not just trying to sell them something or use them to sell something.
I think it's really important, like the collaboration and cohesion of just like being within the industry and moving forward with people who are moving forward. It's funny when you think about just about any organization in the world, Apple, when it first started out, Apple stock was, you'll call it $2 or so. And now it's at, $100, $150. You think about Casey Neistat, when you initially, met Casey Neistat, he was this person that, people barely knew. And now Casey Neistat, riding a skateboard down in New York is like, it's a spectacle. It's everybody wants to see it. And so I do think it like investing in people, investing in creators, there's such an incredible growth path, and just doing it for the the organic aspect of it and just the complementary and everyone just helping each other in a great way to kind of just help the industry move forward is the best way to get the most out of it. And so a quick question that I have for you is, have you had any creator experiences or, people that you've met along the way that really, really had a lot of impact in your journey?
Okay, that's a good question. Creators or brands or campaigns? Like what specifically?
I would say answer, I guess we'll take the multifaceted answer, right? We'll take the creator one, we'll take the organization or brand one, and we'll also take the campaign one.
Okay, I set myself up for that one. It's interesting. So the creator that I worked for, her name was Anna Victoria. We talked a lot about, she had a very specific skill set. And I think seeing her do what she did, I realized that like, I'm never going to be a full-blown, influencer or creator. Creators and influencers take a certain amount of vulnerability. And we would talk about that a lot. Like she was very comfortable, exposing everything about her life and kind of putting that on screen. I'm pretty reserved. So I just thought, I feel like I learned a lot from her in understanding like, this is what people are clicking with. Like, this is why people trust her. This is why people love her. This is why people take her recommendations. Cause like she puts it all out there. And it kind of made me realize like, okay, like that's not going to be me. I'm not comfortable going that far. So I'm always going to be like, maybe I'm an expert creator, but I'm never going to be just a full blown or, like a lifestyle influencer, for example. In terms of the campaigns that made an impact on me the most, I think I'm super into social listening. So I love anything that ends up happening, based on whether it's an agency or a brand, listening, observing, watching what's happening online. One of the examples that I love and I always talk about is Airbnb. When Alex Earle was stranded in Italy, I think it was last year or 2 years ago. And, she's out there in Italy. She's with 11 different friends. They're all, whether, micro or mega influencers. And somebody had screwed up her booking. It was not Airbnb, but somebody else screwed up her booking. And she was talking about it on TikTok. And like within 24 hours, Airbnb was in her comments saying, we got you. We're finding you a place. Like 24 hours later, they're in a villa in wherever it was, like Positano, and they're doing these, videos thanking Airbnb. And I was just like, that's amazing. That's somebody similar to the same way that I say, like, you stay invested, you get to know these people, you follow them, you advocate for them. Like that was somebody at Airbnb watching Alex Earle's TikToks hour by hour and jumping in and activating overnight. And so like any favorite campaign I have usually results from something that was like based on social listening.
I love that. There's so many cool examples of that. I think where really great social teams are just on the ball, and whether it's dropping a funny comment or turning something into a moment. We talk a lot about El Pollo Loco and Chick-fil-A, and this Miri the Siren, got told to stop making, and then eventually worked with Shake Shack and then El Pollo Loco, and the teams were really on it. And I think it was such a great way to engage that fan base, to engage with that influencer, make a meaningful impact to them and their audience, and connect. But yeah, just so many cool experiences.
Yeah, that was wild. I'll just say, to kind of add on to your comment about Miri the Siren and Chick-fil-A, like at that point, I think they should have gone back and rewritten the employee handbook.
Yeah,
and
100%.
I'm sure based on what ended up happening, they may have gone back and done that. And like, well, you have to start seeing not only your creators and your customers as advocates, but your employees as well. And there is definitely room for employee advocacy that includes somebody sitting there making TikToks for millions of views, raving about your food. Like that is a gift. That's not a liability. Like that is a gift.
Yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah.
I'm curious on, some of your favorite brand activations. What's one that really struck you as just being standout, as kind of one of the best campaigns run by a brand?
Yeah, I mean, it's not groundbreaking because it won an award at Cannes, but I love the CeraVe Michael Cera campaign this year. I'm sure everybody, I don't know if everybody on your podcast has said that's the one they love the most, but I think the fact that they incorporated, for me, there's a lot of elements. One is it spawned from social listening. It came from a 7-year-old Reddit comment that mentioned, like, is Michael Cera the CEO of CeraVe? It included a mixture of celebrities and influencers. So at different points, they brought different people in. It just, to me, there was like everything was there, and it was so layered and so many elements to it. So that is probably, out of current, any current campaigns this year, that's probably my favorite.
I love that. It's so funny you mentioned that. I was thinking about that when you're talking about social listening, because we actually used that as an example campaign when we talked to some folks recently, and it was just so clever. He's an amazing actor and just such a funny guy, and the way they kind of staged their Super Bowl ad and people running into him at the store and having him sign bottles and stuff was funny. It reminded me of, I don't know if you saw the marketing campaign that Coors did, but there was a home run that was hit by Ohtani, so the best baseball player in the MLB. And he hit the Coors Light sign in like the second row of the stadium, and it broke an entire section of pixels on their can. And within 48 hours, they had created a custom can with the blacked out pixels on that exact part of the can. And then they produced it, sent it out, and then all of their ads in the stadium, they changed to have the missing pixels, and it just went crazy viral. It was such a great way to like immediately jump on a trend and turn it into something. And you know, they sold a ton more beer. All these people were clamoring for these collector's edition cans. It was such a great way to turn that moment into something bigger.
That's amazing. I had not heard of that, but I feel like now I have to look it up, and it's got to get worked into some of my course material or something, because that's great. And like, how many brands can actually activate in like 24 or 48 hours? That's
yeah,
wild.
that was one of the more surprising things, how fast they turn the can around. I think like I've done real world production. It doesn't seem like anything moves that fast, but pretty remarkable.
Yeah, isn't it the best when you have a brand and a creator that just mesh based off of like a circumstance? Like, I think one of the funniest things that came out of all of this, we had Izzy Zapata, who was on Love is Blind season 3. And when he came out, you know, I think all of us who go through this reality to creator step, it takes quite a while for us to find our place. And I think one thing that was really cool about his discovery was that there were a lot of things in his season that really pertained to who he was as a person, and like some difficulties and, you know, some other things. And one thing that he struggled with was his financial health. And when he came out of it, it seemed like right out of the gate, companies were like, all right, like it's like Credit Karma or, you know, like Visa or whatever the case. They were like, it just meshed with his life. And I think that whenever you have that cohesion of something that is genuinely true to who you are as a person, and what the brand has to offer the world, I think it makes such a beautiful collaboration. So yeah, it's one of my favorite kind of things when it all just kind of, it clicks.
I'm catching up on Love is Blind USA, so no spoilers about the current season, because I still haven't reached the end, so I don't want to know. Don't tell me anything.
So
Okay.
are you at least caught up on Love Island and Perfect Match? Like, you got some work to do.
I know. I got some work to do. I got some TV to watch.
Yeah, isn't the climb or the ascension of reality TV in the last few years is almost as big a boom as influencer marketing? Because once upon a time, everyone thought reality TV was like the most trash thing to ever spend your time doing. And nowadays, when there's a hit reality TV show out, every social network is blowing up.
Well, the pipeline from reality TV to social is really strong. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, you've got people that are already, they're camera ready, like, you know, audiences love them. Like, it's a win-win for everybody. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So I guess when it comes to the events and things that you participate in throughout the year, you know, one thing that I hope people can take from the conversations we have is what's really, really relevant within the industry. You know, what do you think are some of those events that are just can't miss? Because I think when we initially connected, we had some going back and forth of trying to get some time together. And there was one week where we were supposed to connect, but you said, you know, hey, I've got VidCon this week. So obviously you see the relevance in being in spaces like that. So I'd love if you could just share, you know, what you think is important for people to be at.
Yeah, VidCon is definitely one of them. I would have said last year, I would have probably put VidCon as like one of the few. It feels like this year there's so many more events, and there's so many more, not only, you know, creator specific, but there are events like Cannes in the south of France that are adding a creator track. So it seems like there's a lot more conferences that are trying to be more accommodating and bring in creators and influencers. Definitely VidCon, I would go for sure. I think when you go to VidCon, you're essentially, it's less the panels, though sometimes there are interesting things that you learn at the panels. I try to go to anything that the platforms run themselves. So it's like if Instagram has a panel, TikTok has a panel, YouTube has a panel, I go to that above all other things because I feel like you're probably going to be getting intel straight from them. You also get to meet the people from the platform. And so for me, that's really valuable if you're not a huge advertiser, if you're not regularly going to, I don't know, like the meta parties or whatever it is, this is your chance to get in front of people, to figure out like, okay, here's who's the head of creator at TikTok. Here's who's, this person. And I think if you're an independent, whether you're a creator or marketer, that's super valuable. I feel like a big part of it is you're basically just paying for access to these people. And then you're also paying for access to like other creators you can collaborate with and other, marketers and brands, for example. There were less brands this year, so that was maybe not a big thing at VidCon. Depending on when this comes out, there's also this summer, there's going to be the White House first official creator conference that I'm going to. So I'm super interested to see what that's about. There's Vid Summit. There's so many. I started a spreadsheet that I share with my newsletter community of events just to try and keep up, because there's so much stuff. And especially over the summer, there are so many events, it feels like, over the summer.
That's awesome. It's great to hear the breadth of events. And speaking of the White House Summit, it's such a cool opportunity to engage with the administration. Gentlemen, you should say hi to Lindsey Gamble if you run into him. Came from later and is going to be at the
Lindsey and I are friends. I love him. He's awesome. Great. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, so he'll be there. It's such a great opportunity to get to. We've talked a lot, and through the whole TikTok ban discussion, the one thing that I kept coming back to and hearing everyone say is, rather than just go straight to ban, why are we not having a more meaningful dialogue, educating all of those who are in a position to govern about social media and engaging in a meaningful dialogue, connecting the social networks together with legislators to better understand the impacts of social media and the algorithms and the impact on society. Whereas banning is a very, binary decision of yes or no. Yeah. I think similar to how AI, there's been a bipartisan discussion and really deep seeking of understanding around the implications of AI. I think social media and influencers should have the same kind of, same treatment as it goes with the bipartisan committee, and a lot of, great experts being brought in to help educate rather than just push things aside.
Yeah, so. I 100% agree. And I'm hoping that we do have those conversations. It's a all day thing. So it doesn't sound like, it's just like come in, have a photo op and you're done. So I'm hoping that we have those conversations. I'm hoping that we talk about, COPA, the Kids Online Safety Act. But you're right. I do agree. I think we need a lot of education. I think Congress and the Senate need a lot of education that, perhaps we can provide. It kind of remains to be seen, but I am optimistic for what we might be able to get done there.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think, when Zuckerberg spoke before various committees, it was evident that there were some things that could be made more clear to legislators. And not to disparage, they're required to be subject matters on or experts, or at least have a working knowledge of many, many complicated topics. And social is complex, and the algorithms are very complex, and the impact on society is complex. And so I think the biggest thing is encouraging healthy discussion, encouraging understanding, and bringing in folks who really have a great hold. So I'm thrilled for you. I'm really excited. Hopefully you'll get in there and have a big impact and have a meaningful dialogue. As you look at kind of where social and influencer are now, what's got you really excited? What emergent trends are out there? What are you following? You're like, hey, this might be the next big thing, or this is what I have my eye on to see, how it influences us going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there are going to be more expert influencers. I think there are going to be more customer influencers. I saw recently there was a brand that took a bunch of customers on an influencer trip instead of, I guess it's not influencer trip, but instead of having influencers and creators, they took their customers on a trip. I think that creators, customers, and employees are going to play a much bigger role. So it's not just the online, the social media influencer, but it's really looking at everybody now as a brand advocate. Included in that, I think, having a CEO, having, a founder-led presence on social media. I mean, there's a ton of data to back up when you have your CEO on social media, customers trust you more, people are more inclined to listen. So I think it's instead of, we have to turn and kind of evolve from a social media influencer as the only voice that can advocate for a brand to looking at like, okay, here are all the different people, here are all the different groups that can advocate for us. And they're going to do it in different spaces in different ways, but they're going to reach different audiences. And so I think it's like really expanding your definition of what an influencer or a creator is.
I love that we're banking on that strategy of CEO being involved in social media. Hopefully that works out for everyone.
I see what you did there. I see what you did. Yeah.
Thanks for the love.
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think Scott and I talk about it a lot, about getting Scott out there to, bring a face to what we do. I think I don't remember the exact storyline, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at a certain point Airbnb switched a lot of their general marketing dollars to more like public relations, and the focusing on I would say like PR and ways to connect with your audience more by letting them know what's within the organization is so important. And as we're shifting closer and closer towards people being more public facing in all categories, it is really important to present yourself, in the way that you want to be seen in an authentic way. And I love being able to attach more faces to later. But with that being said, you've had a lot of connection and a lot of opportunities to work with a lot of incredible brands. As a marketer, how do you go out and find these partnerships? How, what's your initial starting point, and how do you kind of progress from there? Is there a person that you reach out to, or, how are these connections formed?
For that question, can I just clarify? Is that for me, like for my partnerships, or you're talking about
for you?
Okay, for me.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. I have been very lucky that all of my partnerships so far have been inbound. So I haven't had to go out and look for stuff. It's also, like I said, like I don't necessarily consider myself an influencer, and that's not necessarily how I want to make the bulk of my money. I'm not going to say no. Like, I think if a company that is, that makes sense to me, that I think is going to bring value or some sort of benefit to my audience, I'm very open to working with different brands. But so far I have not gone out and pursued any kind of deals. So yeah, mostly it's all been inbound. And then it's really just about evaluating, like, is this good for me? Is this a growth opportunity? And we're going to be able to like work together again on different projects. I'm very much interested in finding some sort of like, a recurring partnership, like any good influencer, having talked to so many of them. But then also, like the audience, because right now I have a lot of trust, I think, with my audience, with my community. And so making sure that I'm not taking stuff that is going to destroy that trust. It's an interesting thing to start taking brand deals when you have been a marketer, and companies will approach you and they'll say, hey, can you put this in your newsletter? And I'm like, this is not going to work. We've never worked together before. It's a really hard sell. People don't know you. You're a startup. It's not, like, I can tell you as like somebody who teaches social marketing, as somebody who has been a marketer, like this is not going to work. And there have been companies that have said like, yeah, whatever, this is what we want to run in the newsletter, and we're willing to pay for it. And I think at the beginning I was more willing to work with them. And then as I predicted, it didn't end up working out. And I was like, you know what? I can't take any more of these deals where like I fundamentally disagree with how they're marketing their product. Even if the product is good, if the marketing is bad, it's not going to work, and it'll ultimately reflect badly on me because I'm not delivering for them. So it's just a weird situation to be in, to be like both marketer and influencer all at the same time. But it definitely has impacted, how I make the decisions.
That's super interesting. And I would love to get, by the time that this hits the market, you will, everyone out there will be able to access later social listening, which is a new launch coming out. I would love to get your input on that and get a first look before that hits the public. But I'm curious, you have so many irons in the fire. You're teaching, you've got your newsletter, you've got a lot of different like consulting type work. You have so many different vectors of how you could spend your time and energy. And I'm curious, when you look out, do you have a particular path that you're aimed at going forward, where you want to lean into certain areas? Do you want to keep, having a division of time? What's on the horizon for you, and how do you want to manifest this next stage of your journey?
It's a good question, and I wish I could answer very intentionally. I think I'm at a stage in my career where it's like, do I like these people and do I enjoy doing this? I think, if you had asked me when I was starting out my career, I would have given you a different answer. So I don't know that my advice is necessarily applicable to somebody that's like, if you're just getting started, like, listen, bills have to be paid. Like, don't do what I'm telling you to do. Don't be like, do I like these people and is this fun? Like, that shouldn't be the only consideration. I think it's just when you've worked long enough and established enough relationships and established a reputation, I think you get to be a little choosier and kind of decide, okay, like, this is fun. These people are cool. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm also going to get paid. And, like, I do have to, I'm not saying I don't have to work, but I think you can be a little bit more selective when you get to that point. I think when you're much younger, to me, I'm not even sure that I intentionally knew what I was doing, but I think when I first started out, it was really about understanding who had the power, like who had the power in culture, in kind of in the public sphere. And so, like I said, like, I did entertainment, then I did social, then I did influencer marketing. And so it was very much following, like, I'm very interested in who gets to tell a story. And that's what I was following at the time. And now I think I judge it by, like, am I going to enjoy doing this?
I know you said it's maybe not for the young, and there are sacrifices and trade-offs in life, but I do think the guidance of spend time, with people who you enjoy, who you get energy from. It's funny, on our last all team, the literal last quote was, find an amazing set of people, surround yourself and spend all your time with them. And it'll be like the most fulfilling part of your journey and your life. And I truly believe that, you are a reflection of those who you choose to spend time with. So even as a young person, there will be sacrifice that you have to make, and life is hard and work is hard. But I do think, building an amazing team, surrounding yourself with people who you want to be like and aspire. And that doesn't mean that they're all above you. If there are people who are your employees, who are your peers that you feel like would be an amazing influence and someone you want to be like, success doesn't mean top of the hierarchy. And I feel like that message should be out there with young folks, and you can be inspired in all directions. So I think it's a great message to get out there.
Yeah, somebody who hired me and was like building a team said, I'm looking for people who are smart, nice, and get shit done. And yeah, basically that has become kind of like, yeah, that's who I look for. Smart, nice, and get shit done. Like,
yeah, we say no genius jerks. So
there you go. All right. Everybody's got a different way of, like, yeah, we're all basically saying the same thing.
Yeah. Others just say, don't be an asshole, which I also agree with. So I think it's universal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I think this is the maybe the third or fourth conversation that Scott and I have had with someone where we've mentioned, like, sometimes it just pays to be a nice person. You could be the absolute most efficient, most qualified person, and if you're just not a nice person, like, nobody will want to work with you.
It's a small industry. Like, people talk, everybody knows each other. We all know, we all have these conversations, and we all work with each other at some stage or at some point in our careers. And so I think it's like, yeah, it behooves you to, like, try and be as nice as possible. I mean, it's not always going to happen, but, like, yeah, just be good to people, because you're going to work with them again. They're going to come back into your life, or somehow, like, you will cross paths again. So I think, like, making sure that you're somebody that people want to cross paths with is an important thing.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about your journey and the people that you've gotten to work with, all the amazing people that you've gotten to work with, I think one thing that we like to throw out here for any marketers or any organizations that get to listen to this, any brands, hopefully we have a little bit of a platform that we can share, right? A message that you're passing on. So while we're at it, we try to make sure that we scratch your back as well. And in that same sentence, do you have any brands out there or organizations that you've been hoping to one day work with, or to advise, or to, get a closer relationship to, that you're still in that journey to get that connection?
It's funny. I have never worked with Pinterest. And I don't know, there's something about Pinterest. I think the CMO right now is Canadian. I'm originally Canadian. they seem like, and who knows, I know nothing about the internal workings at Pinterest. I think I just like the product. I like how they've also managed to, they've stuck around. Like, I don't know that Pinterest has ever been like the top, 1, 2, or 3 platform, but they've stuck around. They now are having a growing Gen Z audience. I feel like a little bit like LinkedIn, Pinterest is kind of having like a renaissance or a comeback, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it, is like Gen Z all of a sudden is like, yeah, like I'm into Pinterest and I'm into LinkedIn. And so I like the sleeper hits. And so I think if I was going to I like working with tech companies. I like working with platforms. So I think probably Pinterest, I just think would be interesting to like understand what they've got, working, kind of going on under the hood.
I love it. And it's funny, we're doing a lot of work right now with Pinterest around their influencer program and trying to get more spun up. Maybe there's something that we can help with Andrea. I think it's Andrea Maillard, who's...
Yes, exactly.
CMO. Yeah. We love, obviously, later started in Canada, have a heavy presence in Vancouver, BC, and Toronto. So some Canadian pride. Today's a holiday, so you're working on a holiday. But no, I think it's just been amazing, hearing your journey and all the different things that you've seen and watched as you've gone through your career, and now how you're, both continuing to work through and inspire the next kind of wave of social and influencer and giving back with your teaching. It's really great. So if people want to find you, where's the best place to go out and find your content and find the work that you're doing and engage with you?
Yeah, probably the best place is I have a newsletter called In Case You Missed It, or ICYMI. And that's for both creators and marketers. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I mean, like, aren't we all? Like, I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, and Instagram pretty much every day. Not always posting, but I'm always there, always lurking, always reading, always listening, seeing what's going on. So yeah, pretty much across the board.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, Lia, it's been an absolute pleasure. I think Scott and I both really, really loved this conversation. It was super insightful. So thank you so much for joining us. We had a blast, and we're looking forward to our audience connecting with you as well. And on that last note, if you enjoyed our conversation today, please hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you back. Hope you enjoyed, and we will see you next week.
See y'all.
Thanks, guys.